Wish you a glorious Republic Day. This morning, we are preparing ourselves preparing ourselves in a big way to venture into the luminous future. So there is actually here we are sitting on this morning to discuss on human pity. So the topic of discussion will be on human pity born of ignorance and weakness. Many of the times, most of the times, many of us they claim pity is a good quality. Naturally, it is a good quality. We have in Savitri we have of course read, discussed, analyzed Madonna of pity. So here also we are taking the discussion on pity. So it is a good quality we expect always. It has got a greater virtue, no doubt of it. Here in the course, it has got a great value. But the thing is that it has got its weakness, pitfalls. It has got its gulfs also. We are going to analyze in that way. Sri Aurobindo's the topic of discussion for this morning will be on human pity is born of ignorance and weakness. They don't know how this has been formed, how it has come out, how it has been emerged. So human pity is born of ignorance and weakness. That is the topic of discussion right now. Most of the times couple of good qualities that is appreciated by all, and of course it is possessed by some, like goodness, like your altruism, pity, anyway some qualities are there. They are considered of high virtue. But thing is that Sri Aurobindo also this quote has clarified in Savitri in opposite direction and from the opposite angle. We can see, suppose goodness, Sri Aurobindo course, it is a weakness in the heart. Kindness, it is a laxity in the nerves. Again, altruism is the ego's other face. So, service to the mankind, service to God, to serve and all. That is a good quality. Serve and love and serve the God. So humankind. We have most of the times we have quoted Sri Aurobindo quoting. Sri Aurobindo is explaining in a very nice manner that he serves the world that him the world may serve. So these are the good qualitative term. These are the good virtuous terms we are taking in a very positive direction and positive angle. But thing is that if we consider from the another side, from another direction, then we can find it has got this great lacuna. And specifically we are discussing here on the one side that is concerned of the human pity, not the divine pity. So human pity is born of ignorance and weakness. It is the slave of emotional impressions, slave of the emotional impressions. Out of the emotional impression, it has come out and it is working for them as a slave. Divine compassion understands, discerns, and saves. That is the great difference between human pity and divine compassion. Of course, it is a great description by Sri Aurobindo. In one way, Sri Aurobindo speaks of the weakness and of course the error of the human pity. On the other side is describing and of course displaying the what really the divine compassion is, how it works. Here in the course again I will try to explain in some brief couple of words. I will try to explain human pity born of ignorance and weakness. It is born of you are pitiable to somebody because you don't know somebody. One suppose one murderer is doing roles, is dramatizing, sitting on the falling on the roadside, and you are gaining some pity over them because it is night, deep night, he is helpless, crying for help, you are helping, and as soon as you send you spread your hands to lift him up, he will simply pull you down. That is actually out of ignorance. And the second thing, out of weakness. He is my brother, he is my sister, he is my relative, he is my friend, he is my son and daughter. So this human pity is governing, and that is actually destroying us. So Sri Aurobindo quoted, human pity is born of ignorance and weakness. It is the slave of emotional impressions. Then on the contrary, what about the divine compassion? Human pity, the opposite side is sitting, the divine compassion understands, discerns and saves. That is the great quality of the divine first compassion, of course. So again, we are going forward. We are this is aphorism number 528. We are going a little bit ahead. So we are seeing pity is sometimes a good substitute for love. Love and pity, sometimes they go together. They are taken as substitutes for each other. Most of the time they are considered so. Pity is sometimes a good substitute for love, but lacuna is there, the pitfall is there, we have to understand. But it is always no more than a substitute, only a substitute, not the entire whole. Sometimes when there is the lacking of love, so this pity can be taken for a substitute, but it is not always the not always the equivalent or equal. It is to be understood. It is just a substitute that should be taken care of. That must be understood. Again, here in the course of another pity, human pity, divine compassion. Again, we are taking self pity. Self pity is always born of self love. Self love and self pity. So self pity is born out of self love. If there is self love with you, then from there may emerge self pity. Self pity is always born, not sometimes. It is always born of self love. But pity for others is not always born of the love for its object. Self pity and pity for others, that has been characteristically and fantastically differentiated by Sri Aurobindo. Self pity is always born of self love, but another, the reverse side, pity for the others, not for yourself. Pity for others is not always born of love for its object, for that, for others. It is sometimes a self-regarding sinking from the sight of pain. It is so how it is. It can be described that pity for others. So it is sometimes a self-regarding sinking, self-regarding sinking from the sight of pain. Sometimes the rich man's contemptuousness dole to the pauper. Sometimes that image is given, comparison is given. Sometimes the rich man's contemptuous dole to the pauper develop rather God's divine compassion than human pity. So there is a lot of confusion. You don't know where you are really going and how you are getting misled. That's why Sri Aurobindo's finest example, finest advice for us is that develop rather God's divine compassion than human pity. Develop rather God's divine compassion than human pity. That divine compassion, it understands, discerns, and saves. Human pity, self pity, these are the things. Self pity sometimes, born from the self love, but pity for others, it is something out of ignorance, out of weakness, out of misunderstanding. But thing is that it is horrible. Against here in the course, not pity that bites the heart and weakness the inner members, but the divine, masterful, and untroubled compassion and helpfulness is the virtue that we should encourage. Here couple of terms like we have got self pity, human pity, pity for others, divine compassion. Many ways we have seen couple of terms. It is somehow, it may be confusing rather, in which way we have to go and which line we have to click and what really we have to do. So many things are there on the way. So still in the course, not pity, not pity that bites the heart, not pity, pity that bites the heart and weakness the inner members. So here in the course of two terms. One is your pity that bites the heart, and not here in the course does not bite the heart or weakness the inner members, but actually what is the required, what really is needed. But a divine, masterful, and untroubled compassion. But a divine, already we are acquainted with the divine compassion here in the course in little bit tilting manner. with some more additions, some more better additions. But with a divine, masterful, and untroubled compassion. Divine compassion we have had of a couple of times here, but here two more things have been added to that divine compassion in between divine and compassion: masterful and untroubled. Divine, masterful, and untroubled compassion and helpfulness. Divine, masterful, and untroubled compassion and helpfulness, divine helpfulness, is the virtue that ones we should encourage, not the human pity or you can weakness that has got its negation or its contrariety, its pitfalls. But what really we have to encourage, that is divine, masterful, and untroubled compassion and helpfulness. These are virtue that never falters, that never mistakes, and never misleads. So naturally we have to stick to these 2 points: divine, masterful, untroubled compassion, and helpfulness. That is naturally worthiest, and it is most helpful in the way, rather than going to the other side and encouraging other things. So these 3 things: divine, masterful, untroubled compassion, and helpfulness, must be encouraged. There is no other go. And another way here in the course to find that saving a man's body or mind from suffering is not always for the good for either soul, mind, or body, or is one of the bitterest experiences for the humanly compassionate. So divine compassion we have heard of. Now itself the another term we are listening here right now, that is humanly compassionate. Humanly compassionate, that is also one greater phrase has been used to, so you have seen. So again we'll try to little bit understand the deep, of course, the just near to surface discussion here in the course, to find the to find that saving a man's body or mind from suffering. Saving man's body and mind to save from suffering is not always the is for the good of either soul or mind or body, is one of the bitterest experience for the humanly compassionate. So to save man's body or mind from suffering is not always the good, either not, it's not always good. Maybe sometimes we feel in that light, that direction, but it is for the good of either soul, mind, or body. But actually one of the bitterest experience, superlative degree, bitterest experience for the humanly compassionate, so that must be taken care of in a very interesting term, we must take care of. So naturally we are going to find few lines, not more, few lines here to conclude, to come to the conclusion on this chapter on pity. So again, Sri Aurobindo, it is also same thing from, we are quoting from Sri Aurobindo and his glorious description, glorious writing. Only little bit we have seen. Develop rather God's divine compassion than human pity. Again, we are quoting and re-quoting. And of course, with the meaningful suggestion we are coming forward: develop rather God's divine compassion rather than human pity. Human pity, born out of weakness and ignorance. It falters, errors. But the thing is that divine compassion, it shapes. What it does really, understands, discerns, and shapes. Against here in the course, pity for others is not always born from love for its object. Pity for others, most of the time we normally we feel pity for others. Pity for others is not always born of love for its object. It is sometimes a self-regarding sinking from the sight of pain. Self-regarding sinking from the sight of pain. From that sight of pain, self-regarding sinking, we are sinking and taking, it is for taking that way, that it is born always out of that object. Against here in the quoting, pity is sometimes a good substitute for love. It is no more than a substitute. It is only a substitute, nothing more, nothing less. So the substitute can't, you see, sometimes the original person is not there. a captain is actually injured, to his place you are sending somebody as a substitute fielder. But thing is that you think he was not in the player, of course better than your countryman, because he is in the squad selected. But thing is that he is not in the playing 11. Suppose the captain is now injured, for him someone is going for the substitute. He is only substitute, not the whole, representing the whole. And thou shouldst have pity on creatures as well. That thou shouldst have pity on creatures as well. You must, because in every creature there is the very prominent presence of the divine. So that thou shouldst have pity on the creature well, but not well. If thou art the slave of thy pity, because you know pity has been born out of ignorance and weakness, you must have pity on the creatures, no doubt of it. It is salutable, but think not well also. If condition, if not well, when? If thou art the slave of thy pity. Against your window quotes divine compassion. It is a most required term that we know, we describe, and most of the time we play, we keep on. So this is the will, this is the thing you must know. So divine compassion, we must be in a position to understand, to recognize, and to fulfill, of course, to go by the direction. And we must know, so most of the time divine love, one must always must be divine on oneself, one must divine oneself before one can bear the pressure of the divine love. So this divine love must be understood, must be realized, must be practiced, and must be taken into the very cell core of our being. So we must grow, we must grow and progress and adventure with the blessings of the divine love. That alone can help, that alone can save. There is no other go. Bande Matram.